Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Gosztola, and welcome to the channel. Welcome to this video. We are continuing the series of videos paying tribute to Palestinian journalists who have been killed in Gaza. And in particular, two journalists today were injured. Al Jazeera journalists were injured on December 15th, including Al Jazeera's Wael Dahdouh, whose family was already killed by Israeli airstrikes targeting the family. We'll get to him later in this series of videos. But first, uh, please take a moment, if you have not subscribed already, to go to the dissenter.org. Go to the dissenter.org and stay engaged with these issues of press freedom, attacks on journalists. Follow my reporting on WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's case, and also engage with the reporting that I have government secrecy and whistleblowers. This is crucial as people put their lives on the line and take risks to expose government corruption and wrongdoing. I'm constantly covering their stories with this newsletter, and I encourage you to become a subscriber. Like I said, we did a video earlier on the first 10 Palestinian journalists that were killed in Gaza in early October. And these next 10 take us all the way back to mid-October, about a week to 10 days after the Hamas attack that was the event which led to Israel invading Gaza. And they have continued the war. Over 20,000 people at least have been killed now in Gaza. We've seen somewhere around 1.5 to 1.7 million people out of the 2.3 million in Gaza displaced internally. Many have fled if they could, but there's really nowhere for anyone to go. Let's begin here with Hassam Mubarak. October 13th, Hassam Mubarak was killed, and according to the Beirut-based press freedom group Esquies, the journalist was a journalist at the Al Aqsa local radio station and was killed in the evening on October 13th by an Israeli bombing that targeted the homes of citizens in the north of Gaza Strip. Salam Mima was killed on October 13th. On October 13th, Salam was found buried in the rubble. Actually, the date of October 13th is when her body was removed. 3 days before, it is believed, she was killed in an Israeli airstrike on her home in the Jabalia refugee camp. I'm going to read part of the statement from the Coalition for Women in Journalism that was put out to mark Salam's death. This tragic incident, they wrote, highlights the severe toll the conflict has taken on journalists and their families. We call on all parties to immediately end hostilities and indiscriminate bombings of civilians and journalists in the Israeli-Gaza war. The committee actually puts the death of Salam even earlier than October 10th to October 9th. So this is something where people are going to see that there are dates that are disputed. But anyways, days before, Salam, who was the leader of the Women Journalists Committee within the Palestinian Media Assembly, she was trapped under the rubble following an Israeli airstrike on the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. And then on October 13th, it was confirmed by this committee that Mima and her eldest son had died. Mima's family confirmed that her youngest son, Ali, was rescued and is safe. The rescue operation for her daughter was still ongoing. Israeli airstrikes on the Jabalia refugee camp caused significant destruction, including the flattening of mosques and a marketplace, resulting in the deaths of numerous civilians and entire families, according to witnesses and authorities in Gaza. Salam's young daughter was still buried under the rubble at the time that her body was pulled out, and the coalition released this statement So I don't know if her daughter was rescued. I have a photo here of the family, and this is the family that has been torn apart by Israel, by their airstrikes and targeting of this journalist. The photo shows Salam and her husband, Mohammed, and then their three children, Hadi, Ali, and Sham. So, our next journalist to pay tribute is Yousef Dawas, who was killed on October 14th or confirmed dead on October 15th. From the Palestine Chronicle staff, Yousef was a contributor to Palestine Chronicle. He was a, quote, promising writer and a member of the We Are Not Numbers collective in Gaza. He was killed along with several members of his family in the northern town of Beit Lahia on Saturday, October 14th. What is We Are Not Numbers? I'll provide this background just because in my effort to humanize these people, there's often you're going to see through this video limited information about the journalists who were killed. We actually know more about Yousef than some of the many journalists that Israel has killed with its military operations. And so let's share with you that We Are Not Numbers. It comes from this Nonviolence International organization that is based in DC. And the story is that We Are Not Numbers was started after 2014 during the Israeli military attack against Palestinians in the summer of 2014. Ahmed al-Naouk's 23-year-old brother Ayman was killed by an Israeli missile while simply walking on the street near his home in Dur al-Bala. Ahmed sunk into depression from which he thought he would never return to normal life again. During this time, he met Pam Bailey, who encouraged him to write his story. The story resonated with and attracted a great deal of attention from people in the West. As a result, established and aspiring world artists from around the world joined with youth in Gaza and now Lebanon to create We Are Not Numbers. Through this platform, these people are able to share and celebrate the stories, daily personal struggles and triumphs, the tears and the laughter and the aspirations of Palestinians that are so universal that if it were not for the context, they would immediately resonate with virtually everyone. And as We Are Not Numbers says on their site, there are many Ahmeds in Gaza who are aching with loss, struggling to eke out a living and feeling neglected by the world. And this was written before the war that we've seen unfold over the last 2 months. So keep that in mind. This continues. 50% of the population are between the ages of 15 and 25, about 70% of whom are unemployed. Their stories deserve to be brought to the attention of the Western world, whose foreign policy has caused so much of their distress. At the same time, we need to give these youth a way to turn their writing into a mission with a purpose. So We Are Not Numbers recruits young developing English writers to provide the coaching they need to reach their full potential, and each participant is assigned a mentor who is both a native English writer, rare in Gaza these days, and a published author. The mentors coach them on their language writing skills, and the project publishes their essays, poems, etc., on the realities of their lives to educate Western audiences and build bridges based on greater understanding. That's Yousef. And there's a tribute that was put together for Yousef.
Hi, I'm Yusuf. In fact, actually, I'm so sad because I'm starving from all my heart to visit our cities and our places in Palestine more than I want to visit Paris or Maldives Islands.
That was Yousef, and he was young. He was very young and had a whole journalist career ahead of him, and it was robbed. It was taken from him because he was killed by the Israeli military in this war. Continuing, the next person who we pay tribute is Abdul Hadi Habib, who was killed on October 16th. Abdul was a journalist for Al Manara news agency and the HQ news agency. He was reportedly killed in an airstrike in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City on October 16th. The residential apartment that he was living in is believed to have been targeted. This is one of those journalists in which there's very little information about them available. So this is all I was able to glean. But for a number of the journalists, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization has put out statements deploring their deaths. And one such boilerplate statement was put out in response to Abdul Hadi's death. I continue to Hassam Mubarak, who was killed on October 17th. Hassam, as reported by TRT Arabia, reported that this journalist for Al-Aqsa satellite channel was allegedly targeted in their home. The bombing killed him and wounded several members of Hassam's family. I'll note that it was hard to find a photo of Hassam, and I believe that this is Hassam. It's entirely possible that this is not Hassam. And it's pretty sad that you can go and search all throughout the internet for these journalists that were working and try to identify them. And it's extremely difficult to uncover their photographs. It's extremely hard to find who they were and what they were doing at great risk as they chronicled and covered the lives of people in Gaza and covered the occupation or covered the conflict. Next up, there's Mohammed Balusha, who was killed on October 17th. Mohammed, according to the Anadolu agency, was killed in an Israeli air raid on the Al-Sabtawi neighborhood in Gaza. He was a journalist and the administrative and financial manager of the local media channel Palestine Today. He worked in their office. Samy alNadi was killed on October 18th. Samy was a journalist for the Al-Aqsa satellite channel, and he was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Khalil Abu Atra was killed on October 19th. According to Roya News in Jordan, Khalil was a cameraman for the Al-Aqsa TV and allegedly targeted by an Israeli military airstrike on Rafah in Gaza. And there's Mohammed Ali, and Mohammed was a part of the Al-Shabaab radio team, a youth radio person. He was a young journalist that was reportedly targeted in his home in northern Gaza. That brings us to an Israeli journalist who was confirmed dead on October 20th. Rohi Idan was a photographer for Ynet News. He was killed while he was covering the Hamas attack on October 7th. His wife, Smadar Mor Idan, worked for the Shin Bet, which is Israel's internal security service, and Smadar was killed as well. Their 3-year-old daughter, Abigail, was reportedly taken hostage. And I think it's worth contextualizing all of this because Rohi and his wife and his 3-year-old daughter, their deaths are a result of the cycle of violence that will continue so long as Israel continues to press on with their apartheid and their occupation of Palestinian territories. And this ethnic cleansing, this type of conduct is what incites and provokes the type of attacks that were seen, the type of attack that occurred on October 7th, and is the reason why Rohi was killed. Finally, there is Roshdi Siraj, On October 21st, Rushdie was confirmed to be dead, reported dead. He was a co-founder of alNadi, a Palestinian company that specializes in professional media services. That's according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, their description. Here is Rushdie Siraj, and Rushdie Siraj was in the field, and he was reporting on the violence in Gaza on October 17th. And he put out this message that a lack of media coverage from Gaza due to the of more than 12 journalists, the bombing and the blackout of electricity and the internet. He called out the lack of coverage, said that he and others were trying to withstand and continue coverage so that the world could see Israeli crimes in Gaza. And there's also a tribute that was put together for Rushdie with some animation or animated sketches of him.
I am Rushdie, 30 years old. Kind-hearted, I love children and enjoy bringing joy to them. I began my journey as a facilitator, translator, and accredited photographer for United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. A resilient young man stepping towards success step by step. Days passed, and I established alNadi for visual production, achieving numerous local and international successes. Less than a year ago, I was blessed with a daughter. I went to perform Umrah, thanking my Lord for this blessing until the aggression began. My team and I believed in justice in this world. They told us to leave, and my response was, I will not leave Gaza except for the heavens. That day, I went to check on my family, and the heavens were waiting for me. A missile from a warplane killed me, realizing how strong we were and how we were the eyes of Gaza and its pains. 67 journalists and media professionals, including me, were killed in cold blood and with no respect for any law. From the heavens, alongside Yasser, Ibrahim, and others, we say to you, we are not numbers.
صباح البحر صباح الحب صباح غزة.
That was a tribute compiled for Rushdie Siraj. Those were the 10 journalists. That brings the number of journalists that have been covered in this series to 20. As you heard the number there, somewhere around 67, even higher. That many journalists have been killed in Gaza by Israeli military forces. We'll cover every single death by the time that this video series is completed, and then we'll continue to track as the violence keeps unfolding, as it is perpetrated by Israel with the support of the United States government. And so thank you for tuning into this series, taking a moment to commemorate the journalists in Gaza who have tried to report, who were out there reporting at great risk to themselves. And I think this also honors the courage of journalists who are Palestinian, who remain in Gaza and are still trying to be the eyes and ears for the world.